Okay, this is going to be the interview of Katherine Reibman. It's being conducted by Hayden Pace, and today is August 6th. It's about 1:30 in the afternoon, and we are in Atlanta, Georgia. Katherine, what is your full name?
Katherine C. Reibman, middle name Clarice.
And what is your maiden name?
Katherine Clarice Glass, G-L-A-S-S.
And Katherine, where were you born?
New York City, about 110th Street, Manhattan,
And when were you born?
November 22nd, 1920.
And you currently live here in Atlanta?
Yes, very happily so.
And are you married?
I was married for 44 years.
And you have any children?
Yes, I do, two. Francine Reibman Myers, who is married and grandson, and she's a biomedical engineer, director of biomedical engineering in New Jersey. And she does other very wonderful work in neurology. And Spencer, and her son is in college with a full scholarship, very proud of him. And my son Spencer Reibman teaches at Georgia State for numerous years, and he teaches economics on grad level, and he's an entrepreneur of a business, and he's very, very much involved in some very wonderful things, mostly sports. He was a very excellent athlete. He was a gymnast, and he had a scholarship for gymnastics at Berkeley, and I've seen him work out. He was good. They were all good. They were all great.
Very educated kids. How about yourself? What was the highest level of education?
High school, I started college, and I went into show business instead.
And when did you go into show business? Do you remember?
When I graduated high school, I started college, went for a couple of classes, and I decided I want to be in theater because I've always danced my whole life, and I became a professional. I teach all forms of dance. I opened my studio after I got out of the Army. I taught modern ballet, gymnastics, folk, and Girl Scouts. I taught Girl Scouts, folk dancing, anything that was related to dance, gymnastics, baton. I did everything that had to do with theater. And I had been in numerous shows in vaudeville, and it was a very exciting life. It was just full of music and dance.
Were you doing this before the Army?
I just don't recall at the moment. Yes, I did. I was in show business before I went in the Army, and I remember while I was with the show going south, I picked up typhoid fever, and I had to leave the show. And then I recuperated, and then I went into the Army. And it was a lot of fun traveling in road shows and meeting all the various actors and actresses and being on stage. Very exciting life.
So what led you to enlist in the Army?
My brother Steve and I had met Al Reed before, Abe Reibman. He was Navy. And I hadn't seen him in years. And my brother Steve went into the Army, and I adored him. And Steve was a very handsome 6'1" guy, 6 foot. And he went to Australia, and he was stationed in Brisbane, and I got all his letters. And then I got very excited about the whole thing. Then he went to New Guinea, and then I went down to 42nd Street, and I enlisted. And my mother said, "My father, you should only have children like you," because I was always on the run. And I was very fortunate because I had a very healthy attitude to gung-ho, go for what you're doing, be part of it, do something. And of course, my life has been very exciting, always, very affirmative. I'm just trying to think. My most exciting experience was getting on a train with numerous women from all over the United States. It was like a cattle car of so many hundreds of women all talking at once, excited. We were going to Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. And we were a slovenly-looking mess because we didn't stand. But in a few days, after basic training, they all were tall and straight and marched beautifully. And we learned this feeling of congeniality, working together for the same purpose, which we were all there to serve our country. I'm very excited when I get chills when I think about it. And of course, learning how to march, doing KP, and getting your hair off your collar, because I always had nice long curly hair and all that. And the glamour was gone, but the glamour was the uniform. true glamour was the uniform. And you know, when you marched out in Fort Oglethorpe, and you saw these hundreds and hundreds of women who would just be doing all the same thing with such a proud stance and and saluting the flag, and yet you get the chill of hearing them sing God Bless America and things like that. It was a very patriotic era where we totally loved our country, we were determined and dedicated. They sent me to Camp Upton, and while I was there, they had to find out where to put me. I wanted to know where they were going to put me also. So to find out what my qualifications were after taking tests, for the while they put me into the warehouse to help distribute uniforms. Tremendous warehouse at Camp Upton, Long Island. And that's where all the GIs would go before they went to overseas, point of embarkation. Then they put me in charge of a gasoline station. I had a lot of fun because I got to meet everybody, the colonel, the general, and I would gas up the car, and I was having a good time. It was my little cubbyhole. Then one day they said to me, Catherine, we want you to work on the newspaper. And I became the assistant editor. So they gave me a bicycle, and I jolly-ho went around camp, gathering up the news, and I learned to put the paper to bed, to get my interviews, and to do a lot of things, and I met everybody in camp, because everybody wanted to tell me something, and they'd all get the camp 1, 2, 3, 4, Camp Upton, N-O-O-Z. That was the name of the paper. But I was lucky. I was in the middle of everything. And the fact that I had been in show business obviously enhanced my life, because I did all the shows and I met all the fabulous Danton Walker, and all the big columnists used to come to camp, to the little Opry House at Camp Upton. And Lena Horne was there, and I got to meet everybody. How could I go wrong? And I could interview them. And also we did fabulous shows, and I've done the Opry House shows, and I was just part of everything. They had terrific dancers of that generation. There were good Peabody dances, and it was a very affirmative chemistry. It was a great experience. The most important thing is to participate. The more you participate, the more you grow, and the more you enhance your life. And I certainly was on a growing binge. Everything was to grow and be part of life. And I still have that attitude. I call it an altitude. I'm facetious. And what else? Okay.
Let's see. You said that you were at Fort Oglethorpe, and then you went to
Camp Upton.
Camp Upton. About how long were you at Fort Oglethorpe?
Just, I think, basic training, I think, was 2 weeks. It was a very, very speedy, most articulate way of indoctrinating people from private life. And there was no point. You just did it. That was it. You did KP, you had your hair cut, you had to be out, you had to take classes, and they gave you classes to go to, and they educated you as to what the Army was about, what you were supposed to do, and what other people were doing. It was a very thinking process where people pulled themselves together in a short space of time, and they went forward and upward, in my estimation. And I've met people of all walks of life. It was just wonderful. I think the only thing I regretted is that I couldn't get my hair, I had to get it off my collar. That was a chore for me.
Did you find basic training to be difficult, or?
No, I loved it. I love sports. I mean, I love it very much. The harder it is, the more I enjoy it. I like country. I like to push myself ahead. I don't want to go backwards. I want to go forwards and upwards.
How about the bulk of the women that you were training with? Did they struggle with it, or were they also
They were
successful?
great. I have never met, I think there might have been one person who thought she'd like to leave because she thought she was glamorous. She didn't know about glamour. I knew about it. And I don't know what happened to her, but 9/10, I would say even more than 9/10 of the women were very, 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 very enthusiastic. We worked together, we played together, we did together everything, and we learned to work as a unit and for a purpose. There was no, you are just a private to do a job, and you're here to do a job, and that's it. No complaining, and I'm not going to use the other word. And so you had to clean the barracks, so you cleaned it. You had to make your bed, so you did. You stood up a little tension. But one day, what was very funny at Camp Upton, I'll never forget it, Captain Walsh was a very tall lady from Minnesota, quite tall. And she says, how many people like fresh air? And clever me said, oh, I do. She says, okay, go out and pick up the butts. I'll never forget that. I never did it again. But you know, I'm enthusiastic, so I wasn't so smart. But generally speaking, Captain Wall, the one who was the cadre in charge of us, she was from Georgia, a very wonderful sergeant. She had a wonderful congeniality. We got along. We lived together. I did KP for numerous, until I got my first PFC. I used to do KP once a week for sure. And then, finally, when I got something, I only got it later. And then when the prisoners of war came in from Germany, they peeled the potatoes. They washed these gigantic pans that I couldn't, that were taller than me, because everything I cooked was an enormous size. But that was just part of it. And once I missed I was in New York City, and I remember missing the train, the last train to Camp Upton. I was devastated. I called up to my captain, and I told her that I couldn't help it. I missed the train in. There was no other train. The next morning when I got in there, I had a hitch in because the trains didn't go, and she did me a favor. She gave me KP for 1 week. I'll never forget it. It never happened again. But you know, what I'm saying, the thing is this here, everybody accepted it, even if they grumbled and grouched. But basically, there was the purpose behind the whole thing was to accept your job and do it well to the best of your ability. And there was never a complaint about anybody. What I did resent was when the civilians came in and I did KP and they sat down and ate and didn't have to wash the dishes. That I had against the civilians because they lived on campus. It was you know, it's the only thing I could ever complain about. I said, why should I wash their pots and pans? And they get paid, and look at me. But everybody did their job. You didn't have time to gripe. You just had to really move on with it. And everything...
When you say there were civilians on...
Yeah, well, they did some of the clerical... At Camp Upton, they had clerical people who did certain jobs, government workers. But mostly... okay, before I got discharged also, they put me into the war was over, and they put me into an office, and of course I could type, and we worked on the discharges of the GIs. And when I used to work at them, I got an insight into what they went through because they had to tell you everything, and it was their discharge. So there again I was learning. Everything was a process of learning and being part of the whole thing. I wasn't in a corner just doing a job with blinders on and my ears covered. It was a time of life of growing, and that's what life is about, growing. It was a...
You mentioned that at some point they actually brought in POWs from Germany to do some of the cleaning tasks.
That was the happiest day of my life.
Is this at Fort Oglethorpe or Camp Upton?
It was Camp Upton.
Okay.
And it was a very humorous situation because KP is not a pleasant job, you know. Anything else?
Sure.
Oh, and when I got out of the service, I met Al Reed again, Abe Reibman, and I was a very moral individual, and we got married in 11 weeks. He had a lot of wonderful qualities. He loved sports, and I loved it, and he was top-of-the-line fighter. For world champions, he had over 100 fights, Al Reed. My brother-in-law was a fighter, too. And he had a very good family life, and I was I was a generation that's not nowadays. And we got married, and we had 2 children, and we lived in a veterans development.
You said you met him during the war?
I met him before at a dance, and I just simply met him, and then by coincidence, I met him again at a dance, because I love to dance, and where do you meet people? I didn't go to a bar, I went to dances, different generation. And he had a wonderful code of ethics, and he loved what he was doing, he loved boxing, and he was very, very well known for his generation, and I knew Jack Dempsey, I knew all the big-time fighters, Rocky Graziano and all that over the years, and we liked the same things. We had the same feeling about play by the rules. We raised our children that way in this veterans development, where I finally became editor of the school paper and I opened a dance studio. I became a den mother, a Girl Scout leader at the same time, edited the paper, and everything was a challenge. It was a big meal life. It was a fabulous meal, and
Was he involved in the military?
he was a Navy man for, you have his discharge here.
Okay.
You have it down here. And when my, okay, well I can't see this, you'll have to.
Okay. I think what I'll do is make some notes on this piece of paper after we've stopped the tape.
Right.
For purposes of the tape, let's keep going. I'm curious about the jobs that you held while you were at Fort Upton. You said the first one was in a warehouse.
Camp Upton.
Camp Upton, I'm sorry.
That's
It's in
right.
a warehouse where you were
Well,
in charge of
just,
uniforms.
they had to place you somewhere.
Mhm.
And it wasn't really a job. I might have been there for less than a week or something like it. See, numerous people come into camp, and you have to have a place to put them. So they have to find out your qualifications, look it over, and I'm not in camp to just sit and wait till they put me somewhere. So they put me in there, and then they immediately put me in charge of the gasoline station, which was, I went, wow.
Was that
But-
a better fit or a worse fit than the uniform?
No,
job?
it was fun, but it wasn't going anywhere. There was no stimulant. I wasn't interested in doling out gas. I had other qualities that were to be utilized, and they put me on the newspaper.
Is that what you wanted?
I took anything. You see, I have a theory in life. If you're volunteering, you go where they put you and where they need you. But some people griped. I didn't gripe. I just simply accepted it, because then I did the theater, and I did other things, and I had a bicycle, and I was motivated. If a person doesn't have motivation, they're stagnant. They just, am I right? So I was always highly motivated, and that was the whole point. You know, I should put my hat on, no?
If you'd like.
I think I'd like to, because I want to show all the little doohickeys that in New York we had the parades. It was great. We just did a lot of things, wonderful things, and we volunteer at the hospitals in New York. And then when I came down here, I became very involved. And I think that life, analytically and philosophically speaking, is to be involved. If you're not involved, you're just really a hunk of protoplasm with no matter.
Now, when you were at Camp Upton and were working on the newspaper, what were you reporting generally?
Well, the most thing about human beings is to like to talk about themselves. So I would ask them what they did in the past and what their perception is of nowadays, what their future plans if and when they got out. Oh yeah, I remember one thing that happened. They wanted to put me in the hospital. They needed help there. And I said, never. And they knew me already. So they kept me, as I said, when I went to another job, at the end of the service, towards the end, when I went to work in the office there. I had to be actively involved. I had to give my joy of life and my vitality in the right area, because that's where I'm geared to go and get up and dance and be full of fun and do my job with a smile. And
How long did you hold the newspaper job?
oh, a long time. I don't recall, but for a very long time. It was I'd have to look back at my records.
Would you report just the
No.
daily activities of the camp?
Everything that went on in the world. And we had a special office, and it was really exciting, because they would have films to show to the GIs. They would come in there, and I'd get to see all the films of all the things that were happening in the world. And then I would break it down, and I would have a little article about the world and what it's happening. Then I would get clippings and letters and things and news reports that I had to put in that paper and, you know, put it into sections, break it down into columns, into space, and I had to report about what was happening in the world, what was happening there. Actually, I covered everything. I wrote articles about, I interviewed these people who worked in camp, and to make them feel good. Their name was in the paper, and they would really love that. And I wrote a couple of articles and stories that I had fictionized just for fun. it was a very great experience because there was such activity for me that I'm very outgoing, and I have to be fed. I have to be fed excitement so I can propagate and make more excitement. I don't know how else to say it.
Do you remember reporting any specific events that were unusually exciting?
Oh, there's one more thing I did do. They sent me to Washington University for 2 weeks. And that was supposed to be a crash course where there were a few thousand GIs from all over the world and only 7 women. I have to tell you, it was the most exciting, exhilarating experience because we had very involved courses on PR and the relations in the world and all about how the fellows fought overseas and how they carried their knives and their bodies to hide them. It was a very involved course with a lot of things that were very important to know. And there was a 2 weeks crash course, and the parades were outrageous. In fact, I did one of the shows there, If I Loved You. What was the name of the show? And I had a lot of fun because there were thousands of GIs there from all over the world who were taking this I&E A&R course. I&E, Intellectual and Education, A&R, Athletics and Recreation. It was compulsory. In the 2 weeks, we jammed it in, which was fun. The more you push me, the more I put out. The less you push me, the less I'm going to put out or burst. And every show they had, I was always in it. And one particular show, we did this, If I Loved You, I forgot the name of the show, I'll think of it. I was supposed to stand up and say, "Oh, Frankie!" And everybody got to know Katherine Reibman. Because the whole camp was there in the bounds. "Hey, Katherine, where's Frankie?" And then I did other shows. So everything I did was an experience. And it wasn't a gripe.
How did you get involved with this
show?
Yeah, with Washington and Lee. How were you selected among them? You said there were only 7 women involved.
70.
70.
There were officers from, I have pictures, I forgot to bring it, I should have. It might be here, of, I don't know, maybe I have it right here. Oh, here we are. My apologies, there we are. They were all walks of life. You know what I'm saying? Right.
Okay.
So I'm not fabricating.
Perfect.
Okay? Now here's another one that we had. And this is bivouac. I've got to tell you about bivouac.
Okay, what is bivouac?
Bivouac. When they take us out on a parade. Now they take us out to put your tent up, and we have our fatigues on, and and we all got together with a backpack and the fatigues, and we went out and pitched the tent. Then they gave us a gun, and they showed us how to use the gun, how to take it apart, to clean it, and put it together. We never used it, but there was one thing that was very outstanding in my mind at this age, in my stage of life. Everybody worked together as a unit. Whether they liked it or not, they still did the job. And I have a theory in life: you don't like it, you do. You don't like it, you do it and get it done, and gripe later. And that was a very important factor. The only reason I took this picture is because of the different hats. There's the summer hat, and there's the winter, and there's another one, and then the different hats that we wore. We had outfits, summer outfits and winter outfits, and KP dresses, which I didn't love. Wasn't my favorite. Not the kind of dress I would want to wear every day. And I just think that's about it. And also I got a certificate for doing projection in the Army. They taught me how to use a 35 millimeter, and I got that. So you see, there was always something that was happening. They would put me in an area, and I kept going up, up, and up.
When would you use a projection?
Well, if we had a movie at the Opry House, we had to have this, learn how, I did, for this certificate, I had to learn how to thread the film, how to splice it, and how to run it and close it. You don't have to be a mental giant. All you have to do is utilize what you've got. It's called brains. I'm sorry.
How often would troops get to see a film?
Very frequent. Oh, they were training films. Okay. A lot of them were training films. And there again, I got to see what was going on. I was always seeing what was going on. And that's what stimulated me with the newspaper, because it's a natural inquisitiveness that some people have. I didn't say me necessarily. Some people are inquisitive, and some others are closed valves. I just made that up.
Now, being exposed to all this, seeing the training videos and having the troops come in, would other women like yourself in the Women's Army Corps have a desire to go abroad, to be involved in on the
I never
front
thought
lines?
about it. I never thought about it, but I'll tell you one thing, that at the end of my service, when I wrote out their discharge papers, and many of them came back with many problems, malfunctioning situations with their bodies, and it was a very traumatic thing for them to suddenly go through a big war with a lot of intensity, and then to come back and all of a sudden sit down and say, gee, where do I go from here? And then, you know, we used to fill out forms, and then I had to write, I wrote things that they told me. And that became a very, I got a chill when I think about it, sad situation, because all of a sudden the reality of life is, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? I've lost this much years, or part of my health is gone. Things like that, and that's the reality of war.
So these soldiers would come back and they would sit with you, and
or the
you would-
people like myself. I wasn't the only one. There were others who were doing the same job.
and they would give you sort of their identification information and things like that.
Everything
Help
for the
fill out.
discharge. We worked on their discharge, and it was, I think the adjustment after the war to go back to private life was a very serious adjustment for any war at any time in life, to all human beings.
Would they talk to you about that?
Oh yeah. I mean, it depends upon how you interview them. If they wanted to open up, okay. Otherwise, it was a very question. If they wanted to elaborate, that was their prerogative. But there were certain facts I had to know, which it was right on the paper. Ask them this, this, and this. And then if we had to fill in anything, like this.
Well, what do you remember of their general mood when they were facing this transition into civilian life?
At loss. I mean, that's my word. It just came out with spontaneity, at loss. Because they couldn't meditate. That all they could think of, that we're at, now what? And that's life. So, and of course some of them needed help, physical and mental, to have readjustment. And then it became a camp, you know, for people who were being discharged, and we had to place them. It was a readjustment for all. Where would they go? What kind of a job would they do? They left their jobs, they left their family, and everything was discombobulated for them.
So you'd help place them into civilian life?
No, sir. All I did was fill out the form and take down what they said. And that was up to people who are more qualified than I will ever be. Because I'm not, I just am good to a certain degree, but I could learn, but I could never be that great. Because people had to handle them, they had their hands full. Readjustment period. Then it became a nuclear plant, incidentally. Camp Upton. They still have the uniforms there, and these are my uniforms that I donated. And this is a, right over here, there's my uniform, a size 8. And then I had pictures on the wall, and I want you for U.S. Army. This I do when I volunteer. I show them, and it's. I'm not tremendous. I'm not stupid. I'm just one cog in the machinery. I accept it. I don't have to be the wheel. You could be the wheel. Be my guest. But what I did do is, as I said, I was right in back of another GI, and he was such a dummy, he never made a move or a pass. I was up, and that was my joke. It was humorous.
So what kind of troops and soldiers came through Camp Upton? I mean, this was a camp which served as a transition
It was a point of embarkation, and then it was a point of being discharged, and that was exactly it. And when you say what kind, it's whatever that generation had to offer.
So you saw these troops coming in before they were to go off to war, and then you saw them returning from war.
Yeah, and the entertainment in the camp was very important. And of course, dancing was a very, very big thing. Patchogue was the town that we used to go to, Patchogue, I used to call it. And we had horses there. I used to go horseback riding. I never lacked for, I'm enterprising. I never lacked for the ability to do something about anything. Some people reach a plateau in life and they just cut off in life. But that's the individual, you know. And the same thing with these fellas. Some of them went to school under the GI Bill, and I went under the GI Bill. and I studied with Katherine Dunham, who was a very fabulous black dancer. It was a great experience, and I studied ballet since I had been a dancer, but there's always room to learn, and I took advantage of it. And I used a lot of her techniques and the ballet techniques and the dancing background that I had, and tap dancing and baton and whatever it was, folk. I embellished my life by taking advantage of life and learning.
Now, you had said that you had enthusiastically enlisted in the Army, looking forward to all the opportunities that it was going to open up to you.
I didn't look at the opportunities.
Okay.
For the simple reason, I hadn't meditated about opportunities. I'm not an opportunist. I may be to progress myself in life, but I just simply went because that was the thing to do and serve your country. It has no... Opportunity is an opportunist. When you're looking for work or whatever I want to do, when I danced or I entertained or if I did different things in the area, the parades, or became politically involved, which was another thing which was a lot of fun. That's an opportunist. But I was never an opportunist when it came to the service and when it came to country. There's no discussion. It's either you do or you don't. And people look for opportunities. That's a different perspective in life. I'm very philosophical. I meditate on what is the purpose and why am I doing it, and win, lose, or draw, I accept it. But a lot of people can't diagnose that perception in life. They haven't got the ability to figure it out. And that's why they were a little disturbed.
You think this is an approach you held even then, or is this something that you've developed over time?
I think it's a philosophy my parents gave me. They were well educated. Do something about something. That's the best you can do. And it was nothing like that. They didn't measure. And you had to have an evaluation. I come from a generation of people who were intelligent. They went to the world of opera. My father was a tenor, and then they went into business. They became an entrepreneur. And we learned by working together as a unit, a very, very close unit. My parents opened a store. We all worked. There was no discussion. Who's going to argue? You want your bread on the table, you go for it. But it wasn't handed to us. We worked for it, which was a very important thing, my brother, sister, and I. And there was a family, very strong relationship with all our relatives and our friends. We worked together at that generation together. I'm using that word, working together. That goes with my neighbors who were veterans. That goes for wherever it was. We worked together as a unit. I don't know what else to say about that. And Al Reed, as I said, he was adored as a prize fighter. He was very, very popular, extremely. And when he opened a bar and grill, all the big-time fighters and everybody used to come down and say, "Hi, Al Reed." And then it was a very glamorous age. He was excited because he had made a mark in the world. And, oh, gee, I was a prize fighter. And Andre Jesser, my brother-in-law, he was. And the boxing had its rules, and I knew all the big-time people, and I loved show business. We had a lot of things going for us. Everything was a delicious apple. Even the hard knocks were apples. Because if you don't do life, you don't have good knocks or hard knocks. You're just blasé. I call it the doldrums.
You kept in touch with your brother throughout his service?
Absolutely.
How often would you speak with him or communicate?
Well, he was out in California. I went out there numerous times with my husband. And then when he just recently passed away about 2 months ago, and in his 80s. And we brought him, when his wife expired, she went to sleep. And we brought him, my son and my daughter took care of him in Jersey, I told you, and my son-in-law and my grandson. And now we had him here for numerous months, and we saw that he was living comfortably, and we took care of him to his last days.
How about when he was in Australia?
He never talked about the only thing he said, that he ever said, he never talked about it, neither did my husband. It's funny about that generation. They just listened. And he said it was not that New Guinea was hell. I never talked about it. I don't know why. And I never pushed the point, because I always have a feeling, if somebody wants to tell you something, they'll tell you. We got along. We were pals. We danced together. We went to nightclubs. It was great. It was a very put together generation.
So
And
when you got letters from him, what would they be about?
Mom, would you please bake some cookies and send them out? Or what am I doing? Or where am I going? And he just really just mostly asked us for things, and he never, in his letters, he was very careful not to say anything because they were very, as you'll see in one of the letters that he sent, and I have many more at home, that he really never really talked about it because everything was read and edited, it was censored. So I went here and I'm going to do this, but he couldn't tell us where we were going. It was always, you can reach me at this APO, that kind of stuff.
You were worried about him?
I don't think that was our theory was that if we hear from him, he's here. And to worry didn't serve a purpose. Now, I remember meeting Barney Ross, who was a Marine, champion of the world, fought a champion. Gus Lesnovich fought champions. We were in the world of sports. We're hard people, tough. I'm tough, and he was tough. We took life as it went along. We didn't bemoan our fate or anything like that. But no, we were not complainers. We just simply did what we had to do and we went on to the next plateau in life.
How about during your service, did you find yourself befriending any specific individuals over a period of time, or have you come away from this experience with certain friends?
If they were involved with the world of dance, I was part of it. They were my friends, theater. You could see it. I'm not in this one, but I have pictures at home that I was in every show. I was in anything that was a party. There was anything that was happening, I was in it. I mean, you sure better believe it, because I have to tell you, I was part of it. Even over here when we did that Broadway show. I don't know what it is. I just have that feeling.
How often would you put on shows?
Oh, at least every 2 weeks approximately, or whenever we could. Special service did that. And of course they always wanted, if they had dances, I was always there for sure. I mean, like I danced with the best dancers.
What kind of shows were these?
They were Army shows, Army skits, and it was always a takeoff and a rank out about the officers, and it was kind of a little getting back, in a sense, make fun of it, or kind of making a joke out of it. Nothing nasty, nothing vulgar, and basically I find them to be a very highly intellectual group of people that I met there, especially if they were involved in theater and that. They were diversified. Some became producers when they left the service. And
were these theatrical shows rehearsed, or were they impromptu?
Oh, they wrote it, and the ones that some of them had bought. They had bought the. I have the stuff at home that we did, and I worked in camp incidentally for 22 years. When I left the service, I worked as I worked in camp. I worked in one camp 7 years. I was camp director, dance teacher, director, and I always worked up near Tanglewood. I always was in charge of the groups or teaching dance, and I was always giving back this kind of feeling that I had to be in the world of theater and arts and music. I worked up in Massachusetts, the Catskills. That's what I'm thinking about. I was always working in the summer. I had the dance studio in the winter, worked in the summer. My husband used to come up all the time, and everything was theater, dance, and I was always on the move.
With these shows that you were putting on, were these for the troops that were about to embark, or the troops returning, or just whomever wanted to attend?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, the idea was to give them an entertainment. And sometimes, most of our shows were about Army life, but not poking fun, but sense, making a little joke out of it, but not nasty. And there was never any anger. Not that I have some of the stuff at home. There was never that kind of anger. When they came out of the service, I think they were frustrated, a lot of them, because they didn't know. Now somebody says to you, you have to think for yourself. You're going to have to figure out where you want to go from here. But when you're in the service, you can think, but you don't overthink. They think for you. They tell you where to go, what to do, when to eat, when to sleep, and what to do. And that in theory. But I was lucky when I went to the Washington University, that college, they taught us other things, how to deal with GIs who had particular situations.
So it's a
I mean,
form
you
of
know, how to,
psychological training.
well, to embellish them and to give them something of a little joy of understanding or release. It was a very highly intensified course. I mean, boy, we really went from one class to another and went on the parade grounds and we took our tests and there were colonels there and I have pictures at home. I should have brought them with you. I have some more that were really great, big shots like that of the whole unit. It was an exciting time of our life when we'd sit down on the grounds with this captain who would sit down and we'd talk about situations, how we would handle it. We would all sit down, a very relaxed atmosphere. How would you handle this? Or what do you think will happen? And if this should happen, you know, in other words, they said, here's a package. What are you going to do with it? Open it up and see what's inside. In theory, they were opening up little molecules or follicles, or whatever you want to call it in your brain. The little marbles were moving around.
These skills that they were teaching you, did you find that you were able to use them later?
Oh, of course.
So in your
Absolutely.
interactions with the GIs?
Absolutely. There is nothing that you learn that you cannot utilize at some time in your life. If you don't learn, you have nothing to utilize. Am I right? Right.
When during your career within the service did you attend Washington and Lee?
Oh,
Was
I'd
it
have
towards
to.
the tail end or the middle or in the
No,
beginning?
about in the middle. Yeah. You know, things went so fast for me in my life that I was always on the move. It was like I was eating, here's a piece of cake, I'm eating and I'm ready for that piece of cake. Think about it. I'm still the same way. How do I slow up? I'm going to be 83 in November. Wow. Wow. And I've got miles to go.
Your approach to GIs in the first half of your career within the service and then attending Washington and Lee and then afterwards, did you find that you really evolved in your approach to the war environment and GIs and their particular needs or concerns?
I was prepared for any situation at any time because I'm going to use that word philosophy. If people sit down and think it out and say, what is the benefit of griping or complaining? What are you going to do about it? So whatever situation came along, even if I didn't like it, there was nothing I could do about it. I had to accept it. And that's life. So when people are angry and they blame everybody, sometimes they got to sit down and talk to themselves. I want to say one thing. My studio was a huge success because I came to the level of the children. I would sit the boys, I taught gymnastics to boys. I would sit them on the seat and I would sit on the floor and I'd say, okay, something or nothing, and nobody could talk. They told me about their body, why they like sports, and then when they were all finished, we'd go out on the floor and we'd do some basic moves that they liked. I always did everything that they liked because they generated electricity to me to go further. I would race them across the room, and when I had their bodies going good, then we'd go through the basic mats, doing mats, round off, cartwheels, back handsprings, and whatever, you know. And I did the same with the girls. I taught them folk for the preschoolers because folk dancing got them together to work as a group. To work, people have to learn how to work together, to be together. And then the folk dancing was wonderful. And then I would give them basic ballet, and everything was basic, not to deform their bodies, but to develop the skill of utilizing what your body can do for you. So the mind and the body have to work together at a happy medium. And for even the women's classes that I had, and I studied, as I said, I had bongos, and I always did what women would do, and I had 2 women's classes. I worked 7 days a week, social dancing. I generated more energy by working more than working less. The more I worked, the more I do, the more energy I have. The less I do, the less I'm going to put forth.
And this is the attitude you used during the service as well.
Well, it was the same way. I've always been that way. I have
a question about camp and the way it was structured, did the GIs who were about to embark, were they intermingled with the GIs who were returning from service? Was this sort of an open camp, or were they separated?
They were separated to a degree because if they came in to have their records taken care of, that's the only relationship they'd have with them. But the people that came together were a unit, and they had something in common. The people that were working, their future was there in camp or to go on with. The fellows that came back, they were in disarray. Where do I go from here? What do I do? My career was stopped. My schooling was stopped. I saw things that I never thought I would get to see in my life, horrible things. And some of them were malcontent, some were angry, and some were going to do something about something. World War II, that's prevalent. So they were faced with a dilemma, how to go out and face the world and make a life.
So it might not have been productive to have them intermingle with the GIs?
It had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
They were just there to get their discharge and to leave and go on. And it was a quick decision. Like, boom, you're in, and you're going overseas, and that's it. Here's your job. You're going to Italy, you're going to France, or you're going to Ethiopia, or wherever. I'm talking about Army. When they come back, they're faced with a situation, what do I do with what I've got now? What do I do with what I have now? They don't have the same perspective in life because they've changed. They've seen something that was horrific, horrible. How do they deal with it?
Now, were you in service at the time that the war came to an end?
You know, at the moment I can't think. I think so. I was discharged, yeah.
But do you remember the day that the war itself, that Japan had surrendered?
Well, I'd have to look at my discharge papers. As for the we had special classes at both camps where they would tell us about the war and what was materializing, but they only told us what they thought we needed to know. Our job was to follow orders, exactly. And whatever opinions we had to close down that. We could have them, but they were stored in back here because we couldn't utilize that because we're taking orders. We're here to finish the war, do a job, and go home.
Well, Catherine, we're approaching the end of the tape, so what we'll do is we'll go over we've got some photocopies of some materials that we went through before starting the tape. Why don't we go over these and we'll have you explain what they are, and then if there's anything I've failed to ask you about that you think is important to be memorialized on the tape, we'll go ahead and discuss that as well, okay?
Is the tape still going?
Yes, it is. And I've got in my hand now an enlarged copy of your honorable discharge
Right.
card.
Okay.
And there's 2 pages here.
Oh, my husband was on the Greeley, did I tell you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the picture of this?
No, but you can hold this up for the camera if you'd
Oh,
like.
and here I am volunteering. Oh, that's my brother Steve. I don't know if you could see that.
Yes.
And there's Steve, the one that was in New Guinea and Australia, Brisbane. And then there we are. I'm still active with the World War II veterans. I'm in all their parades. They can't get rid of me until I die. That's tough. And that's the Greeley that Al was on.
Let me get you to hold up the honorable discharge card so that we can identify that. That will be submitted in the archive along with the tape.
I think I'll put it up this way. Here, all this stuff. I'm so embarrassed talking about myself like this.
Now, are these the cards that you would help the GIs produce when they were
No,
discharged?
I had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
They gave me that, and I've kept it all along with my thumbprint and anything else, all the background, when I went into the Army and when I got out and all that.
Okay. Now you can hand me those. We've got 3 photographs, and if you can just look at these, hold it up to the camera so we can identify which piece of paper that
All
is.
right. That's T5, Technical Corporal Katherine Reibman. I finally got that when I got out. And one of the jobs they gave me, till they filled me into my final job, was to teach people this is the discharge group. They put me in for a very short while to teach people how to build a house and what kind of a house they'd like to have. I knew nothing about it. They probably knew more about it than I. But they gave me books, and I read the books, and I showed them the books, and we discussed it and what was proper and whatnot. Because they were going home, they were going to build homes, and they were going to make a future. So they had a course. They had all kinds of courses for these young people who left. This is one of the GIs who was typical, who came through camp, and we would talk, and he was in the world of art. He was a person who created the most magnificent jewelry ever. Very, very, very expensive, top of the line, because he typified some of the young men who came in who were in different worlds of endeavor. They did other jobs of other things.
Now we've got a larger picture here, which you can hold up for the cameras so they can...
Oh, I'm not in it. I ought to get you the other one. This is one of the typical shows that we were in. That's Ruth McLary, who ironically enough had been in show business, and we hit it off great. And Ruth was great. And these are people who were in the world of theater and music and art, and they naturally became involved. And
does this typify what
this is a
shows
typical
you were
show
showing?
at the Opry House.
Okay.
And I wish I had the other picture, which
And
was a
this,
great one, where
I
we're
believe-
doing a hula. The fellas are doing a hula. It was funny.
That looks like a treatment or a synopsis of the show. Is that right? It was attached
Could
to
be.
the photograph itself.
Okay, some members the hospital days, yeah. At the Armed Forces, that's a convalescent camp. It became a convalescent camp, so we entertained there also. And that's Sergeant Gene Marvey and of Mount Sinai, Long Island. The directors, players left to right, PFC Ruth McLary, who was from Allentown, Pennsylvania. Sergeant Arlinge of Flushing, Long Island. I was in Queens. And T5 Health Ellsworth of Kentucky. And Duncan Aldrich of Falls. Some of these people were in show business or musicians.
Now this photograph of the show and this paragraph entitled The Right Direction, was that used as an advertisement for the show itself, or was that just sort of after the fact they created
Well,
this?
they put that on the program.
Okay.
And I really have some more stuff at home that I really didn't get a chance to bring because they were very updated and upgraded. Oh, and some of the things I have here, just by way of jokes. Of course, we went out a lot in New York, and the GIs were very, 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 very respectful, especially to women, extremely, depending upon the woman. And these were some of the pictures. Now, we used to go nightclubbing a lot in Manhattan because Camp Upton is Long Island.
I'll have some photocopies made of these two photographs that you just
Right.
showed.
Oh, here's one. Oh, this is us going horse. We rode polo ponies at Camp Upton. There's my captain up there, Captain Walsh, and the GIs. Some were from New York, and we became friends over the years. We went horseback riding. We did a lot of things together. We worked and played together.
Now I've got some photocopies of some cards. Why don't you identify these?
Okay? I'm sorry. Oh, that's my husband, Al Reed, Abe Reibman. This is Abe Reibman, the domain of the Golden Dragon, ruler of the 180th meridian. And he was on, it's greetings, it's April 45th, that's latitude 7, SOS, length,
Do you
and
know what
weather.
that card is?
No, it's U.S. General A.W. Greeley, and it says that he belongs to this, to the sailors, wherever you may be, to all mermaids, dragons, spirits of the deep, devil chambers and chasers, and all other living creatures of the sea, greetings. Know ye that on the 25th of April, 45, that's where you are. Here's another, plank owners. That's what they gave the sailors. To all sailors, wherever it may be, greetings. Know ye by these present, A. Reibman was a member of the original crew, which was commissioned to the USS General Greeley, rights and privileges or whatever. And that's March 1945, 22nd. An ancient order of the deep. This is a certified that Abe Reibman had been gathered to our fold and duly initiated as a trusted shellback, having crossed the equator on board ship. I mean, oh, Class A pass, Camp Upton. That was my life, getting a pass. Pass number 86, date of issue 7/21/46. WAC detachment 1208 SCSU. Catherine Glass, that was my name. Private, serial number A207480.
So that pass was what entitled you to leave the camp
Yeah.
to go...
And so authorized to be absent from camp. It gave me permission to leave camp during Upton during hours indicated by reversed side.
But
And
how often were you allowed to leave the camp?
on a weekend pass, unless the one time I didn't get is when I pulled KP because I was late. That was it. I never broke rules. That wasn't my fault.
So on a usual weekend, you would leave camp?
Oh yeah, go home. Go to my friends in New York, go night clubbing, have a good time. Great time.
And then the last two looks like a registration from the military census and inventory of 1917. It's
Oh,
the state of New
that's
York.
my father.
Refers to Max Glass. Max was your father?
Yeah, Max Glass was my father, and my mother, Celia Glass, and they came from Russia, and his certificate of military census and inventory 1917, and he was registered. And I'm very proud of the fact that he came here just about World War I, and he was supposed to go in, but he had children, but he did have to register. And he wrote beautifully. He has a beautiful handwriting, very literate person. Both parents, they spoke languages, they loved music and the arts, and they were very, very low-key, very low-key. And they always explained everything and why I'm doing it, and do I have any questions? But I did it anyway. I have a brother and a sister, right. There I am at the Washington Lee University, where I had this 2-week course, which was I&E, A&R, and it was a very, very exciting experience because anybody who went there had to have something upstairs, and I think I got it.
And I'm going to make photocopies of those two pictures and include them with
Right.
that.
Yeah. Oh, this is bivouac, which was the funniest thing ever. Taking a gun, and we all had a lot of fun. It wasn't a chore. It was just we all went together. We just did it. There were no gripes. Pitch a tent. We learned how to use a gun, which we never used. It was all very wonderful.
Is there anything, before we turn the camera off here, is there anything I haven't asked you about that you did want to discuss?
Oh, what I do now with the groups?
Well, how are you active now?
Extremely active with the World War II group, and here we are being honored by the veterans. And what I do in my life now, I volunteer at the Symphony Thursday, Georgia Public Television on Pledge, and that's for many, many years. I'm here since '93. I work conscientiously every Friday and Saturday at the Rich Auditorium. I got a couple of awards. I'm active with the World War II veterans, and here, Outstanding Achievement, I got an award with these World War II veterans, and that was honoring women's vets, and that was with, what's her name, Kathy Cox, Secretary of State, and I'm active with the veterans at the VA hospital. I cover I do articles for them, for Dr. Melton, and I do the photography for all their shows, and photography has become my love, and I'm very happy to do that. And I do other things. I don't know, I just can't keep up with me. I'm hungry. I want to live my life for the fullest. And if I'm going to say no, I'm going to miss all the delicious, even the bad parts of life. And here they have a synopsis of the people here when we were honored that day at the courthouse. It was such a great experience. Everybody was so glad to be together and share our experiences. Katherine Reibman, I don't know what I wrote.
Katherine, I thank you for sharing your experience.
Thank you.
I think we're going to conclude now.
Okay.